here shortly. He's having some technical issues. So it's Friday morning. We are just getting started. We have a guest today, which I am super excited about. We're going to bring him on here in just a second. I'm going to give Jake a few minutes to get into here, figure out his tech issues. So this guy, I'm going to just start doing some of the intros here, okay? Because I reached out to this guy and I said, "Hey, will you come be on this show? Will you come talk to us about this thing that you do in selling and leading sales teams?" And he was like, "Me?" Which was astounding to me because this guy's all over everywhere, huge, lots of experience, successful. So I said, "Hey, why don't you go ask some people what they want you to talk about when we interview you?" And he goes, "Okay." So he goes and he asks, and there is just comments and comments and comments of people asking for things that they want to hear this guy talk about. So we're going to dig into all that. We're going to talk about his backstory. We're going to talk about selling and leading and content and creation and doing it all the right way. And so we're just going to wait a few more seconds for Jake to get in here, and it's going to be awesome. So where is, not exactly sure what is happening right there. So here's what we're going to do instead. I'm going to bring guest on for right now, and we're going to start kind of chatting while we're waiting for Jake to get here. And yeah, so I would like to introduce everybody to my homie, Moose.
What's going on, everybody? John, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate you inviting me, and stoked to be here, man. Stoked for us to finally connect too. I know we've talked a lot on Facebook and a lot on Messenger. It's good to finally see your face and get to know you, man.
Absolutely, man. I am so stoked because we've been connected on, and this is important to know. This is our first actual conversation video chat, which is kind of crazy because we've been following each other for a while, I would think.
It's really funny with Facebook, the way it's evolving, right? Like you get this community together, and all of a sudden there's people that you align with, and you start to form this like alliance-ship with. But you're like, yo, you know that I've got your back on certain posts, you've got my back on certain posts, but it's good to finally be connected in conversation.
Absolutely. So because I asked you for some brags. I said, "Hey, can you give me some stuff that we can share with people? We can talk about some of these things that you did." And you said, "Can you give me a couple of days?" I said, "Yeah, of course, happy to do this." And then you came back and you were like, "Hey, does this work?" Okay, so let me just kind of run down the highlights of what you put in this message real quick. Okay, so this is crazy, everybody. So Moose he's been working in sales for 12 years. Okay, so he started out at Cutco, and for people who don't know, Cutco is like one of the proving grounds for salespeople, right?
Yeah.
If I talk to someone who is running a team or they're running a company and they say that they have Cutco experience, I am instantly more relieved, right? Because they've done it, they understand it. Okay, so and he was a top producer there, which is kind of crazy because there's some grinding people in Cutco for sure. After that, BlackRock. He was a mutual fund wholesaler. I have all the questions about that because that was like my dream job for a little bit. I wanted to be a mutual fund wholesaler.
Yeah.
You found enrollment sales. You took a person to a 7-figure run rate in under 90 days. They already had some revenue coming in, so this wasn't from scratch, but still a huge milestone. Yep. Let's see. You got someone at $8 million a year since 2019. Moose has built out 150 sales organizations, introduced 3,000 sales reps to business owners in roles from setters to closers to account managers, sales managers. That's nuts. His first 3 months in this new role, he's been poached. We'll talk about that. He went 220% the target.
Yep.
Dude.
It's been quite the journey, man, and never thought that I would be where I'm at now. Mm-hmm. Never thought I'd get into the logistics field, but like you said, got poached. And sometimes when the right offer comes available, you can't help but say, "Yeah, let's figure that out."
I think there's a whole book about that by Alex Hormozy, right? And offer so good you can't say no. Or
exactly right. No. Exactly right. Exactly right.
So let's go back to this thing at the beginning, right? What prompted you to go to work at Cutco? Like,
what prompted me to go work at Cutco? Gosh, I've got to figure out how to tell you that story without even telling it in a hour-long conversation itself. So before my experience at Cutco, I was actually selling timeshare, right?
Okay.
Where another place where sales reps are born, right? I have sort of a unique story where I was playing football at Florida State, right? When I went home to for Christmas vacation, I found my family living in a hotel room. My family always did very well growing up. My dad was in sales. This was in 2010. It was just like
Hmm.
a very weird time for me, right? So I got
Yeah.
myself into sales, did well, helped my family get back on their feet, but then decided that I was going to go back to college. When I decided to go back to college, I had to have the income keep coming in. And
Yeah.
one of my buddies was selling Cutco, and he was doing very well. He was like, "Dude, where else are you gonna make 20 grand in a summer selling kitchen knives?" And I was like, "I don't believe that we can do it, but fuck it, let's do it." So I got started selling Cutco. It was a great product. I still use Cutco knives today. This was 12 years ago, right?
I love
And
that.
really just fell in love with the process, the pain in the ass of it. Am I allowed to curse? Sorry.
You can say whatever you'd like, my friend.
All right, cool. The pain in the ass of it was that Cutco is very MLM-y, right? And with what
Okay.
just happened to my family, I didn't have friends and family members I could go to and say, "Hey, you want to spend 2 grand on the set of steak knives?" Like they were like, "Dude, we're living in a hotel, right?" So
Hmm.
I asked our district manager for leads, who or not leads, but receipts from everyone who had purchased over the last 12 months, right? And then I would call them, give them the same spiel, and say, "Hey, I'm a cute college kid. I'm coming by to sharpen your knives. I get college credit just for sharpening your knives. Would you mind if I came over?" Right? Then they're all excited to have you there. But while I was there, I was upselling and cross selling other knives that they didn't have in their drawer, right? Well,
Okay.
that led to a bunch of. I found myself. I didn't know at the time what BlackRock was, right? I found
Hmm.
myself in a network of BlackRock families, and they were all extremely wealthy, all doing very well. And they were like, "Hey, kid, like if you ever want to stop selling kitchen knives and come sell mutual funds with me, you could probably make more money with it." And I was like, "I don't know what a mutual fund is, but that sounds pretty good." So
Wow. Okay.
it's kind
Okay.
of cool.
I got to pause for a second because there's a
Yeah,
couple of things in there that I would like to ask you some questions about, if that's okay.
sure, sure.
So you talk about going to this district manager, asking them for the receipts, and you kind of figure out this method of getting meetings,
Yep,
right? What
yep.
did you learn that somewhere? Did you read that in a book? Was it just like starting with ease? Why did you take that approach starting out?
So, because of my background in timeshare, right? In timeshare, it's very similar to the high ticket space where your leads are provided, leads come to you. Some leads are better than others. It's just sort of luck of the deal that you get dealt that day, right?
Hmm.
Um, but your best leads always were your referrals, right? So I
Yeah.
had to figure out a way to build up a referral network, and I knew that, and it had to be outside of my A list, as they say in network marketing, right? My
Yeah.
my warm list. So really, it was just a way I knew that they would like the product because they already had it, and I was a fan of the product, and hopefully they'd be willing to go through another sales presentation if they had already purchased. You know?
That is like I don't know. I I mean, I think I would have that capacity to think like that now, but there's no
Yep.
way I would have had that. Like, you're how old are you at this time? Like 20 years old? 20,
Yeah,
21?
20 years old, 20 years old at the time. So it
I
was
didn't have capacity for that kind of thinking at 20 years old. Like, that's awesome. That's
Well,
crazy.
it's really funny, John. Like you said, guys who come from Cutco, I love them if they've done well from Cutco. But you can tell someone a lot about someone's character about how they speak about their past employment, right?
Oh yeah.
So when I
Oh
talk to
yeah.
someone from Cutco, I'll ask how their experience was before I tell them my background with Cutco, right? What is the sales rep? And I was interviewing someone a couple weeks ago. He's like, "Oh, Cutco sucks." I'm like, "Oh, why does it suck?" And he's like, "Oh, I couldn't get any leads. No one wanted to buy them. The knives are overpriced." And he's like, "But do you want to hire me?" I'm like, not really. Like, you're talking to probably the biggest Cutco advocate in the world." And now it's so funny, John. I tell my wife all the time, I cannot wait to for some 20, 19-year-old college kid to call me and say, "Hey, I'm in college trying to put myself through. Would you mind listening to my sales presentation?" Because that'll sort of be like a catalyst for me to change someone's life. You know, the way it
I
did for
feel
me.
that. I feel that
I'll be like,
completely.
"Yo, you just hit the slam dunk. I'm getting the Cutco kitchen."
So, okay, the moving from Cutco into BlackRock, right? Like, it's a different
Yeah.
industry, it's a different market, it's a totally different class of prospect, that you're going after, and the relationships that you're building are different.
Yeah.
Did you have any interesting or unique struggles moving into that new space?
Yeah. So even though I had a network of people who were supportive of me and they were giving me referrals for Cutco, et cetera, um, my first interview with BlackRock, I actually didn't get the job, which was a hit on my pride, and I was super embarrassed by it. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember they had me in the interview, and they said, "What do you know about the market?" And I told them not much, but I know that when the U.S. Economy sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold, and that's all I knew about the market. And
Such a sales guy.
they laughed their ass off, right?
That is maybe the most sales guy thing I've ever heard. Well, I heard this once. Like it's such like a Tommy Boy thing, you know? Like
It's such a. They were like, "Where'd you learn that?" And I was like, "Oh, my mom said it once."
So funny. So okay, so did they tell you right then? Did they send you the
They
letter
did. They
afterwards?
did.
Okay.
They did. So it's a really invasive interview process. It's an 8-hour interview process. You're interviewing with multiple managers, presenting in front of them. They told me that day that I didn't get the job, but they were like, "We like you. Like you're funny. You have balls. We like you, but go back, finish your college degree." I didn't have my college degree finished, so that was the first thing. And while you're getting your college degree, get some background in finance too, right? So when went back to college, at this time I was about 24 years old, right?
Okay.
I went back to college, changed my college degree, excuse me, to creative writing because it was my fastest route out. I had already been in a 5-year span of college, and I was like, whatever. I just want to get out. I want to get this degree so I can show BlackRock I have it.
Mm-hmm.
From there, I put an emphasis on my degree. So I was a creative writing major with an emphasis in finance, which means I can write a really good poem and
Make a
then
spreadsheet.
sell it to somebody. Yeah, exactly. So while I was in college, my second time around or third time around, I was also in customer service in homeowners insurance, but that did give me a little bit of background in finance where I at least knew what I was talking about when I went back to the second interview.
Okay.
Ironically enough, when I went back to the second interview, much different position. It wasn't an internship that I was interviewing for. It was a SA, a sales associate role.
All
And
right.
in that role, I had to go to the hiring directors and I had to present a mutual fund to them, right? One of the most nerve wracking things I had ever done. But by the time that was all said and done, they went back to the people who referred me and they said, wow, like this kid's the benchmark. Like this is how all interviews should go. So
Oh
it was
wow.
a tough journey. It was about a 2-year journey, but
Mm-hmm.
I think I started there uh, January of 2016. So,
Oh
I
wow.
was
Okay.
26, 27. It was a long journey, but it was cool.
When so I was a financial advisor for a bank,
Where
and
are you?
oh yeah, I had my
I had
seven
no
and all of that
idea.
stuff. Yeah, this is a long
Yep.
time ago, and I was working as a banker, right? So I could write business, but we also had partners who were upstream and stuff like that who were like the actual financial advisors. So I had my licensing, but I was a full service banker, and
Yep.
when I moved over to this new bank was when we really started to get access to like wholesalers. They're taking us out to events, trying to schmooze us and everything else like that. And it
Yes.
was it was so funny because I'm so new that I was just like, oh, we get to go to a baseball game? Like what? And and then we get to the baseball game and like we're in a suite, and I'm like, oh my,
Yes.
oh wow, this is crazy, right? So then talking to the advisors there, I'm like, oh my God, like what are we gonna do? This is really great. And they're like, oh, wait till like someone who we like shows up and like wants to take us out. And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, oh, we don't even offer this product. Like he's trying to earn the business with this. And I was
Yeah.
like, are
Yeah.
you like, this is earning the business? And they were like, yeah, like we don't even like their products.
It's
Like, this is crazy.
it's so true. It's so that's how the whole business is. I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit later, but that's how I landed this job where I'm at now. Right, I was in the interview process, and for my third and final interview, I flew out to go and meet the CEO. Right, and I flew out to go meet the CEO on my own dime. Right, and I told him it's because of my experience at BlackRock. Right, at BlackRock, if whether you're selling IVV, right? Which is BlackRock's ETF on the S&P 500, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you're selling BOO, which is Vanguard's S&P on the ETF or ETF on the S&P, right? The products are so linear. It's the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But BlackRock's might be 4 times more expensive than Vanguard's, right?
Yep.
So how in the hell is BlackRock, do they have $9 trillion of assets under management while Vanguard has probably $5 trillion of assets under management if their product is 5 times more expensive and they're selling a commodity, right?
So,
And
okay.
the
Now,
answer is in the relationships. They take you out. They're the
yes.
biggest donor to your charity, right?
Mm-hmm.
They schmooze you. They become your best friend. You're like, of course I'll spend more. Like, it's John. I'm buying from John. I'm not buying from anybody else. You know?
Okay, so whenever I was in banking, one of the things that always drove me crazy was whenever managers, because like I'm like, okay, what's the difference? Right?
Yeah.
I work for Chase, I worked for Compass, right? I worked for Wells way back in the day as a customer service rep. And it was always confusing to me because they're like, you're the difference maker. And I'm like, we don't even have any differentiation in the market, and I'm just supposed to go create this stuff. So, and it was a struggle for me. I didn't know how to sell any other way other than just by like discounting and like, we're cheaper, we're better and everything else. I didn't know how to position value in a way to kind of test the waters and stuff. Did you struggle with that coming into BlackRock, moving away from Cutco?
Well, I'll say this, right? The role that I ended up being in an SA role, I didn't get to the point where I had to be on the outside, right? I was the one running reports, right? I was creating the pitches
Okay.
for the outside sales team, the guys who were taking people out, et cetera, right? But I would say that the background with Cutco, right? The background with timeshare, and even now the background with BlackRock, right? Has really created sort of my sales personality, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Because all of those were relationships. Cutco, same thing, premium product. You can buy steak knives for $100. You don't have to buy it for $2,000, right? But it's because of your relationship. And timeshare, one of my first sales managers ever said, make a friend and you make $700, right? And I took that to heart. I think depending on the industry, it's a little bit far fetched, right? But it's interesting how my first sales job in timeshare can relate to every other sales job that I've ever done. And if you look in our space, John, I think that part of the business is missing, which is really ironic, right? The salespeople are like, "Oh, I want hot leads delivered to my calendar," right?
Yes.
But they don't do any relationship selling at all. Like they think they are because they build rapport or whatever.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's just transaction.
Yeah. Man, that's because, okay, to be fair, I wanted that myself, right? Like,
Yep.
like when I started my business and I started to play in like the high ticket area and like learning and working with coaches and everything else like this, it was because I wanted that same thing, right?
Yep.
The relationship matters, right? Because if you mess up and you got to go eat crow, right? You got to go show up and be like, hey, we missed the goal. Hey, the implementation didn't go very well. Hey, we missed the training deadline, whatever it is. If you have no relationship, you get no grace. You don't get another opportunity. You just get like shown the door kind of thing. And it just makes it hard because these people don't want to do the front end work. And my biggest frustration with like the whole setter to closer process, right, is just how disconnected these two people are, as opposed to like them working together as a team to like really align and make sure that they're doing it the right way. Because I know that every time I take a meeting with someone because I've scheduled with a setter, the closer just comes in with all this entitlement. Like they don't do any discovery. They don't ask any questions. They don't understand about my use cases or anything else like that.
Hey, do you want to buy?
Yes.
Oh, I'm such a great salesman.
Oh yeah, like, and then they're out there fist pumping, and then they're posting in these groups about like, like I'm such a good salesperson. I closed this deal. It's like, well, you closed the deal on a pipeline that like has got a lot of process and marketing and everything else in there. So before you get excited, maybe do a cold call, just one. Exactly. I don't know. Very, very, very interesting. So what I would like to talk about now, right, is this concept that you and I are going to be very familiar with, but I think most other people are going to find this potentially a little hard to understand. Let's talk about enrollment selling.
Sure.
Very specifically as a strategy. Can you share your thoughts on that?
What about it? Anything in particular?
Well, so there's lots of people think of selling as a sales process, right?
Mhm.
And then one of the biggest kind of watershed moments for me was hearing someone talk about sales and admissions are the same thing, except you're excited about one and you're not excited about the other,
Mhm.
right? And so
Mhm.
positioning it as an admissions process, hey, let's see if you qualify,
Yep. Yep. I love that.
already
Really good
changes the
example,
energy.
John. Yep.
Thank you.
So what I'll say about this is really funny. Uh, it's weird how it comes full circle, right? My first sales manager ever in timeshare
Hmm.
tells me when I'm 19 years old, uh, make a friend and you make $700,
Hmm.
right? So when I first get into enrollment sales, what am I trying to do, right? I'm trying to make a friend with everybody, trying to build extreme rapport with them, trying to build this relationship because that's what my entire background has done. And
Hmm.
I did okay, right? I'm not going to say that I stunk, but I did okay, right? Um, but where the game changed for me is exactly what you said. You changed the process to an admissions process, right?
Yeah.
And I know a lot of sales trainers talk about becoming that authority instead of becoming a friend, right? Um, but the example that I always use, right, is remember when you were in seventh grade, John? Right? And you probably got that one friend that you can hang out with, and you're going to go to the movies together, or you're going to play video games, and you're going to hang out and stay up all night, right? But then you've got that
Hmm.
other friend, right? And the other friend is, he's cool with the ladies, right? And you get an invite from both of them on the same weekend, right? You end up blowing off your one friend, who's probably your closer friend, right? To go and hang out with the
Yes.
chicks, right? But the reason why you did that is because that guy had the authority and you wanted what he had, right? It's the same
Yeah.
thing in enrollment sales. You got to scale back the, hey, let's be friends, buy from me because you like me, the how to win friends and influence people type of sales pitch, right?
Hmm.
And be the authority. And now you're making a recommendation to them based off of what they should do, based off of, not based off of just, hey, buy from me because you like me.
Was that a hard shift for you, like in your mindset of like how you think about it? Because I find that traditional salespeople who are just acting instinctually when it comes to talking about like process and repeatability and stuff, they flex because they're
Yeah.
like, well, these are just conversation, but yeah, but you can run your conversations along the same lines without it being scripted, without it just being free flow, and you don't get anything done. Was
Yep.
that did you have any struggles with that shift with your
It
history?
it was a hard shift, but I'll tell you this, once the shift happened, it happened hard, right? I learned a tactic called delaying the decision. And once I heard about delaying the decision, I was like, "Oh my gosh, the game just changed," right?
All
Because
right, so
again, huh?
please,
Sorry.
please share. Okay, please share a little bit more about delaying the decision.
So again, in timeshare, right? There was no follow-up process. There was nothing. It was 90 minutes. They buy or you die as the sales rep, right? They buy or you're going to get fired. You get 50 cents and that's it. If no one buys from you in 50 cents, you're done, right?
Wow.
So in this process, I was spending an hour, hour and a half with people trying at first before I started learning about delaying the decision, beating them over the head, trying to get them to buy, right? Then I start learning about delaying the decision. My calls start going 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. My call time gets cut in half because the whole time I'm just qualifying, right? And
Hmm.
anything that they say that's out of alignment with the qualification process, it's just like, John, you're going on vacation next week. Like, I don't think this is the time for you to get started with this, right? The last thing that I want you to do is get started. You pay all this money to get started, and then you don't have the time to dedicate towards having success with this program, right? I don't
Yes.
know. Maybe things will be better for you down the road. Maybe we can re-explore it then. But for now, let's just end the call and then keep in touch with me if something changes. Let me know, right? And what happens? The prospect's like, huh, it's funny. It's a psychology experience. So you can hear them
Hmm.
start blabbling over their own words. They're like, oh, wah, 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 wah,
Yeah. Yeah. Like
and
it's the most counterintuitive thing on the planet because you're in that moment. It's an emotional moment, right? So some of your thinking that you normally have is gone
yep,
because that just happens in some of these conversations. And so you then have to apply the most counterintuitive thing ever, right? You don't eat if you don't close this deal, but you have to find some way to kind of test the waters, right? See
Yep.
where you are. I call it tapping the brakes, right? Because if you tap the brakes and they want to keep going, you know where you are. If you tap the brakes and they just stop, you also know where you are.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
it's so hard. So okay, I want to jump ahead a little bit, right? Because I
Yeah.
want to
Go
talk
ahead.
about coaching and training reps, right?
Yep.
Specifically. So what do you think the hardest part of training a new sales rep is? You think it's
The
mindset? You think it's
heart.
technique? You think it's talking? What kind of bucket you think is the hardest thing for a new sales rep to figure out?
So there's two sides of this, right? There's from the sales rep side and from the business owner side. The hardest part from the business owner side, I'll start there, is picking the right sales rep, right?
Agreed.
Every business owner, they all want to hire the next Jordan Belfort, right? And their business is their entire world, right? Whether they're doing 10 grand a month, 20 grand a month, 30 grand a month, or 100 grand a month, it doesn't matter, right? They think that they are deserving of paying someone only on a commission basis. And that person better be the best salesperson in the world, or they don't have the right to sell for them, right? Well, the example that I really like is that sales reps are very much like marketing, right? You're never going to run one campaign at one time and throw all your money at that one campaign, right? You're going to test multiple campaigns. And it's the same thing with salespeople, right? So when I introduce salespeople to a business owner, from a closer side, what I found after introducing over 3,000 salespeople is that typically there's a 33% retention, right? So the reason why I introduce 4 at a time is because one person in the interview process, the business owner is going to say, I don't like that person. Like they're an asshole. I don't want to work with them at all. And that's fine. Different strokes for different folks. I could introduce that person to another business owner. They'll be like, wow, this person's amazing. I can't believe it. There's no science to it. There's really not, right? One person, they're like, wow, this person's amazing. I can't believe how good they are. I can't believe you found them. Then 2 people, they're like, I don't know if they can do it. Like they have some sales experience, but I don't know if they can do it. Like I'm not sure why you really introduced them to me. Those top 3, I tell them to make an offer to. Because what happens is the number one person that they are in love with is usually shopping the market and they're good at talking, right? They turn the offer down and they say, thanks, but no thanks. If they only made an offer to that person, then the business owner gets emotional and says, fuck, why'd you send this person my way? Right? Then the number 2 and 3 take the role. Usually one hovers around and does okay, but one ends up being the rock star. So it's a matter of data and collecting the data across the 3 reps, right? And if all 3 end up getting on board and making it, awesome. As far as training the new rep, right? What's hardest about that is, again, with the science behind the math on the onboarding side, it's just as hard from the onboarding side, right? Trying not to overcommit to that one rep. You're like, oh, this guy's going to be awesome. This guy's going to be amazing, right? What I always ask reps for, especially when it comes to a new sales rep, right? And this is just a trick interview question.
Oh, I love these.
When it's a setter, right? I ask them, what's the hardest thing that they've ever been through in their life, right? That's the story that I want to hear. And if they can't tell me, if they've been sitting on their couch eating Cheetos their entire life and they've never been through any adversity, they're probably not going to be a good salesperson, because the moment that they start running into adversity, they're going to quit.
Yeah.
But if they can say, I've been through XYZ and I overcame it by getting through this, then you know that guy is going to be the guy who can take shit lead after shit lead and then still come out on top 90 days later when things get better.
Yeah.
Right? So again, you find the guy who's really good at talking and you want to commit, you're like, this is my guy. Right? But usually it ends up not being that person. Is that a fair answer?
That's a great answer, man. Honestly. So what do you think?
Something similar? I'm just curious.
So I don't work in the enrollment high ticket coaching area like you do. So most of the people that I'm working with, like we're trying to go full cycle, right? Because
Yep.
they haven't figured out the ads and everything. And the way that we approach selling is that with really great discovery, you can very, very quickly iterate your marketing, right? Because you're asking
Yep.
really great questions and things like that. Like, oh, what prompted you to want to take the call? What did you want to talk about? I want to talk about this. Note for marketing.
Yep.
These are their words and stuff. So we work more on the marketing agency side, and we also work with people who like set appointments and do these things. So it's a little bit different because the hard thing for me is trying to get people to like understand like the mindset of prospecting, that
Yeah. Right.
it's just filtering, and like you can't get emotional about it. And the thing that I love that you talked about a second ago is the thing that I talk about all the time. The depth of your pipeline creates space to be
Yes.
discerning, to be focused on quality, and to not be commission breath, right? I talk about those salespeople all the time. And you're doing the same thing for this business owner, because you said if you just source one and it doesn't
Yep.
work out, they're going to get emotional, they're going to be pissed off and everything. But if you bring three, they get to see the differences between them, right? And they get
Yep.
to kind of remove the emotionality of it, of like, oh my God, this better work. And they get to make a decision based upon alignment and results and everything else like that. It's the same thing, just applied to a different context, which I think is
Yep.
really cool.
The industry that I'm in now, right? We have such a I don't know how else to say it, but it's such a complicated sales process, John, right? And we get a lot of inbound leads. In a given month, we might get 120 inbound leads across 2 reps, right?
Mm-hmm.
But of those 120 inbound leads, 10% might be qualified, right?
Yeah.
A very, very low percentage is qualified. So what I've done is I've created an inside sales team who's there to qualify those leads before they get them in touch with the outside sales team, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
the is considered an outside sales team in this space, but the one who
Sure.
receives the inbound call, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the inside salesperson, the one who's qualifying, will often get frustrated, like you're saying, right? Because they're like, "Oh, this person's unqualified. I've talked to 10 people and only one person's been qualified." And going back to what you're saying earlier, I'm like, well, great. We have to cold call it, right? We can create a list of all qualified prospects. We have 2 routes that we can go. Take the inbound leads that are going to be 90%
Yes.
unqualified, but they'll have interest, or we can cold call where everyone's qualified, but they have no interest.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? If we can balance the two, that's where we're going to find our harmony at.
I love that, man. I've never heard it talked about in just that way, but like that's such a before I moved into B2B, I was terrified about having to go find my own leads, right? And
Yep.
now on the other side of it, because I have the curse of knowledge, the idea of just having to deal with whatever came my way and trying to make
Yep.
the best of it and stuff like this, and having to deal with the fallout of when it doesn't go my way, that like that's why I enjoy prospecting, because I know what I'm getting into. I know they're qualified. I know they hit certain levels and stuff like this. And I would rather deal with like a colder conversation to where I know that 5 of my 7 big ticket things are in line.
Yes.
That makes me more excited about going through the suck of like, okay, let's go find out who to talk to, and let's go try to start a conversation and everything, because I've already figured out of the 7 things that I'm looking for, 10 things I'm looking for, they hit the majority of them that I can see from the outside.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And what's a pain in the ass is no matter how much you tell the rep this, right? The rep still always wants to work the stuff that's coming to them. And
Oh,
I can't blame them. I get it. I
I
get
can't
it.
either. I can't either. Honestly, like it's such a, like you have to. I mean, everyone talks about mindset and selling, right? And there's some toxic levels of the mindset juice in selling, and you've seen it, and I've seen it.
Yep.
Um, but I was talking about this on a coaching call yesterday. Like you can't just hear, well, just don't worry about it, or just go for the no, right?
Yep.
And in that first brush, be all you need, right? You have to go
Yep.
out. It's like the weakest muscle in your body, right? And
Yes.
it can't do
Yes.
anything, and you have to go work on it and polish it up and continue, because like sales is a craft and is a skill, and these are skills you develop, and if you're not using them on a regular basis, they also decay.
I love bench press and I hate pull-ups, but the only way I'm going to get better at doing pull-ups is by doing pull-ups. No matter
Yes.
how much I bench press, I'm never going to get better at pull-ups. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Right. And, dealing with rejection, finding no's, right. Tapping the brake, right.
Yep.
Always, all that stuff comes from continuous reinforcement, putting it in front of you, having good coaching and accountability and community around yourself. And also, and this is the thing that nobody talks about, None of this stuff is approachable if your sales leader isn't also like on that same train.
Gosh, John, this is a super interesting topic. I'm not saying anything wrong about anyone, right? So
No, you're not.
take it with a grain of salt. But most of the sales leaders in our industry are doing coaching from something that was working 3 or 4 years ago in the world of enrollment sales, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they haven't done this outside work or this relationship selling work, right? So now that the game is transitioning, we're in a completely different economic climate today than we were a year ago,
Oh
right?
yeah.
The game is evolving, and if they're going to keep playing that same game that they were playing 3 years ago, they'll be wiped out. They're not going to make it around, make it for any longer.
Yeah, for people who ever sold in a down market, like it is different. Like no, like everyone is like, oh yeah, like they can't wait to take a demo. They can't wait to hop on a call. That's going to change like as this gets rockier in the economy and every like I'm surprised it's not harder than it is right now with the war and all this other stuff going on. Like
Yes.
a lot of people are tightening the purse strings, and that doesn't mean that it's impossible to get meetings or have great conversations or close deals. It just means you're going to have to lean in on the relationship because like shiny things like cool products and features aren't going to be the thing that draws attention anymore.
You're exactly right. I was saying yesterday, everyone who the marketplace views as the top reps in the market right now, right? In August is going to change, right?
Agreed.
And the reason why that's going to change is because here's exactly what I foresee happening, right?
Okay.
By the end of July, they're going to announce that we're in a recession based off of how the GDP numbers came back in Q2, right?
Mm-hmm.
After the inflation report, I'm 99% sure that the GDP numbers are going to come back negative. They'll officially say that we're in a recession. The market's going to take a hit. The last time we were in a recession was 2020, but we had the blessing of stimulus packages and everything else that went out, right? We can't do that anymore. Inflation is at an all-time high. So we're in a rising rate environment now, which is going to really hurt people further than it was in the recession, right? Or in the last recession.
Agreed.
So as a result, marketing budgets from the business owners are going to get tighter, right? And business owners who have inbound salespeople only, right, are going to go to those inbound salespeople only and say, hey, guess what? You now have to go outbound to find your own leads, and you have to close deals, and you're not getting comped any differently, right? And those inbound salespeople are going to say, fuck you. I'm not doing that, right? And then they're going to go and jump to a bunch of different offers trying to find something that they've had for the last 2 or 3 years, and they're not going to find it because it doesn't exist in the marketplace. So the person who survives from the sales rep side is going to be the sales rep who's already setting their own deals, but is competent enough to close their own deals, and is just like, oh shit, I can close my own deals now?
Yes.
That's good. Yeah. That's that person who is viewed as an underperformer or not even an asset right now in the marketplace is going to be the top performer by the end of Q3.
And I feel the exact same way. I feel like what's going to happen, right? And I talk about this with my clients, right? Because obviously if you can give somebody inbound, awesome, fantastic. Yep. There's a whole lot of benefits to that for the business owner, right? And also coaching and training and developing that salesperson's a lot easier because if you're just inbound, this might get me flayed in comments. Like, this is not the same thing. Like, no judgment, no flack or anything else like this, but like, I can go get meetings. I can go fill my own calendar, right? And to me, like that's the foundational skill to being a salesperson because anybody can get in the call, the qualifying call, like, and just kind of walk in with a script and some questions. And of course, you and I have the curse of knowledge, so we know exactly how easy this is for us.
Yeah.
But it's one of those, it's to me, these skill sets are not the same, right? And so we always talked with our owners of like, okay, great. If they bring some stuff in, you need to pay them more. Well, why would I pay them more? Okay, well, because you didn't pay for ads, you didn't pay for the click, this is not coming from your process. This is additional effort. And you want them to go do this. You want them to go out and source their own deals. And so that way, when your ad account gets banned or when your like cold email gets shut down or something like that, or your setter quits or something, you're not just left in a gulch.
Yep. And what so many small business owners fail to realize is that's how every big business pays their people. They all incentivize extra to go out and find their own leads. So many of
Yeah.
these small micro cap business owners are like, oh, you should find leads because that's your job.
Yeah.
What the hell do you mean? Right? Like, people ask about how to get their setters to do work all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
To give you an idea, I pay my setters a 50 grand base, right? Plus commission per set appointment, plus commission per deal, plus they get profit share at the end of the year, right? We split profit share across all employees, plus insurance packages, right, etc. Right?
Mm-hmm.
How ironic that the trick to getting somebody to do what you want them to do is to pay them properly. Everyone's like, "Oh, I'm going to
Oh
pay my
man.
setter commission only," and if my closer goes out and sets their own appointment, I'm not going to pay them anything additional. It's like, are you kidding me?
I mean, that you and I are on the exact same page as far as how that goes, because like if you if you're just commission only, don't expect them to be there when you need them, because they're just not going to be, because you're not paying for attention. You're paying for the outcome, which means that
Yes,
they also get to come in and do that outcome whenever they want, because you don't actually own that person, right? And then everyone gets mad. I don't know. I've got all these leads that need to be worked, and my guy's not around. Okay, great. How much you paying the guy? Oh, well, nothing. He just closes deals, and he gets paid on his closed deals. That guy's out interviewing with other
exactly
people,
right.
because like people don't understand this, but like the sales rep that's making 150, but it's all commission, and then they get an opportunity to make like 80 base, and then the rest is commission. They're going to
Yes,
take that role and roll the dice, because it's just too risky to be always 100% commission, right? And so salespeople figure this out, and they're, oh, well, now I have a skill set, I know what I'm doing now. Okay, great, let's go upstream and
yep,
let's go get a base. So I hate these people who are like, "Well, get a $3 an hour VA from the Philippines, and they can do your setting for you." And it's just like it goes all over me, right? Because
yep,
it's a hard job. It's thankless.
yep,
You can't even get your salesperson to do it, so you're having to hire this other person to do it, and you're gonna try to chop their knees out as well. It just doesn't make any sense to me, right? It's an activity driven thing. Pay for the activities you want them to do, and then
yep.
bonus them for doing them well.
Yep, I give this spiel on the talent spectrum, right? And it's basically talking about the further that you go to the left of the x axis on the talent spectrum, right? The more that you're paying for someone's time and less for their skill. The further right that you go on the talent spectrum,
Yep.
the more that you're paying for their skill, right? The only way possible to hire a VA to do your setting, the only way is if they're only doing it through Messenger, and then you can copy and paste the script, and then you can put a list of objections and rebuttals on how you want them to copy and paste the
Mm-hmm.
rebuttals in, right? If there's anything else, now you're starting to pay for more skill than you are
Yes.
for the time, and you can't have. I'm not saying that no VA in the world could probably do it. There's probably a very skillful VA salesperson out there somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking. I use VAs all the time, right? But I'm saying that the hourly rate is probably not going to go well. And John,
Yeah.
4 years ago, pre-COVID, right? Uh, the benefit of this industry, the small business industry, online remote work, whatever the hell, was that you could work remote.
Mm-hmm.
So the small business owners had an advantage that they could pay on a commission only basis, right?
Yep.
Because the mid and big couldn't offer that because everyone was in the office. Today,
Mm-hmm.
the climate is completely different, where
Completely different.
mid and big businesses are starting to enter the remote market as well. And if you can't match what the mid and big size businesses are offering to their employees, you're not going to win that employee to come work for you.
Well, and that brings up a really great point that I had not even thought about this at all. But like the power of being remote and being able to go do your own thing if you have sales craft is very alluring, right? Because one of my friends, he sells corrugated boxes.
Yeah.
Amazing salesperson. He's one of my accountability partners. He'll walk in with a big order, and everyone's like, "Oh, you've been on the golf course all day," because like they don't understand what it takes, So you don't want that salesperson in the office in that kind of industry. They need to be out in the field, and then they
Yep.
get crap talk to them when they're in there from the operations people. Oh
Yep.
yeah, oh, how's the steaks and all this other stuff, and it's such like a bizarre kind of situation to me. But all these high ticket closer people, right? There's some very toxic people in our space, right? There are some people who have a product that isn't worth buying in our space, right?
Oh
And
man, most.
so, but that call of you get to do whatever you want, you can work from wherever you want, and everything else like that. Some of these guys put up with some pretty egregious owners and terrible products and bad pay schedules and stuff like that because they get to work remote. Now that everybody can work remote, if you're thoughtful about it, that is going to change things. That is really, really interesting. Thank you for that, man. I need to sit and think about that for a bit. Okay, I would like to talk about a couple of things that we got in the feed of you asking for people. Okay, so Peter Lassard. Okay, and I'm starting here because this is the one you were like, hey, we should talk about this. Okay, so Peter Lassard. Okay, you have an amazing top level perspective on the game. Nice to get the curtain peeled back for someone sitting on top of the maze. Okay, whether it be about offer owner versus closer dynamics from a career path point of view, any insights are priceless. Do you know? I don't really know where the question is in there. Whether it be about offer owner versus closer dynamics or from a career path point of view, any insights are pointless. Or priceless.
What he's really asking there is what's the career path look like for a remote salesperson in a small business, right?
Okay, I like that.
So just a little background on Peter Lassard. Peter Lassard is someone that I put on a couple different offers, and he's one of the best salespeople that I've ever met. Like, he's a monster, right?
We're connected, actually.
Are you? Yeah. So keep that in mind. He's an awesome salesperson, but he's in a unique spot too, where he also owns his own agency and it's very successful. So he is living the ideal life, right? The ideal remote salesperson life, where he is traveling out to Mexico with his wife, living remotely, going somewhere different every month, right? But he's done what 90% of the industry can't do, where the majority of the high-ticket salesperson space is really just masking their laziness with, I want to travel, and they're masking their laziness with their ambition, right? Yeah. He talks the talk and he walks the walk, which most people end up not doing, right? Mm-hmm. So the career path for salesperson to salespeople in this space, right? This isn't talked about enough. Everyone always thinks that setter to closer, and that's it. And then you die a closer one day, and that's you have that written on your tombstone, right? Yeah. When you're going into, and this is the real play in the industry, in my opinion, John. When you become the foundational salesperson for a small business owner, right? There becomes less of an employee to employer relationship and becomes more of a partner relationship, right? Yep. If the business owner is trusting of the salesperson's feedback, then the salesperson can be trusted to make other decisions throughout the business as the business starts to grow, right? Mm-hmm. The first opportunity that comes to them is typically a management type of structure where it's like, hey, I need you to bring on other people in order to scale. We're going to go out and create other verticals, blah, 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 right? But ultimately, the route that you can go and the route that you should go, this is giving away the goods here, is it should become more of a private equity play.
Yep.
Right? Where the business owner is willing to give up a portion of equity to the salesperson so that they can get their time back by eliminating the decision-making process in their business, right? Mm-hmm. Giving it to that person who's now like, I don't know if you want to call it a CEO or a co-CEO, whatever you want to call it, right? Or at least an equity owner in the business, right? Yeah. They can go out and start other ventures because they have the capital now, they have the success, they have the background. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, the project is already taken care of. And let them participate in the multiple of the business, that being the salesperson.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
The multiple of the business as well as the profit share. That's where the real opportunity comes. Where this goes south is that most business owners have never done this before. So they go into it with the intention, when this is brought up, to do this correctly, right? But intention isn't enough to do something correctly, right? So they'll go in with the intention. They don't cross all their T's and dot all their I's. And then someone ends up getting screwed from the deal, right? Mm-hmm. Someone goes to pull profit distributions, but visibility wasn't given on the accounting. The profit distributions aren't there to pull. So now someone's been working on this project for a year and they can't pull any income from it, right? Yeah. Or the business actually isn't sellable because the owner is the star of the show. So many business owners love the vanity and they
Oh
want them
man,
to be the star of the show. Really, that's crushing your multiple because you can't go out and sell something if you are the star of the show. Instead, you should make your brand the star of the show.
man, okay. That's why this is here. What a nugget, man.
Yeah.
Intention is not enough, right? Like,
Yep.
I love bringing on that first salesperson, right?
Yep.
Of like, great. And part of that big process is building the playbook and pulling out all that instinctual knowledge that the owner has been kind of collating and collecting over all their conversations. And you don't even know what to tell the salesperson, right? Because
Yep.
like knowledge transfer is such a flawed thing, and the curse of knowledge and all this stuff. So, man, I love this. That's so good. I'm going to be sitting on that today. And so Jake is here, everybody. Let's bring Jake in real quick. Hold on. Good morning, Bill. How
What's
are
up,
you,
Jake?
man?
Hey, sleepyhead.
Let's do this. Hold on one second. Can I move these?
Yeah, you can put Moose in the hot
Yeah,
seat.
no, yeah. I'm trying to put Moose in the big one.
Oh,
There
man,
he is.
now I'm feeling it. Did you see me
Look
break
at
a
that.
Nice.
So, okay.
What's up, Jake?
Man,
What's up, Moose?
okay, so Goose meet Jake, Jake meet Goose. We got super deep immediately. So we've been just kind of going off.
Of course you
And
did.
the thing we're talking about now is awesome because Moose is talking about like what's the long-term play for like sales pros? Like how do you go to the next level, right? And my thing is always you shouldn't just take your highest performing salesperson and put them into the sales manager role because
Oh, no.
if you are a producer, you are good at producing. It doesn't mean that you have the skill set to manage and think strategically and do everything else like that. Like, any thoughts on that, Moose?
Oh man, I couldn't agree with you more, John. Too often, the top producer on a team. This is the way I'll phrase it. The top producer on a team is a great producer because they're focused on vanity, right?
Interesting.
So, someone who's going to be a good manager is focused on systems. They can figure out what the second producer is doing wrong to not bring them to the top producer role. Where so many business owners go wrong is they think that that's found in what they're saying, right? I'm talking to so many sales managers right now who are spending 20 hours, 30 hours a week right now on call reviews, which is such a waste of time. Like, it's such a waste of time, right? But they're all looking for, oh, you should have said this when the prospect said that. Guys, that's not the stuff that makes deals. It's not the stuff that makes deals, right? The best sales manager is going to be someone who can replicate a process throughout a team, not the person who's going to be focused on their own sales results.
What a nugget. Okay, I'm glad we're on the same page about that because it's you don't take Michael Jordan off the court and turn him into the coach, and you definitely don't do it in the finals, like when everything is on the line and stuff. Like you might do that in like the pre-season scrimmage or something like that, just so that way he can feel great about himself. But so Jake is
the same analogy. I said Joe Montana is still not a Hall of Fame coach.
That's true. And that's even better than the Michael Jordan thing. All right. So Jake is he's been an entrepreneur for a long time. He's taken a role with a big salesperson. I'll let him tell you about that in a second. And so now what he's doing is he's transitioning some of his main stuff to kind of side hustle. And he wants to move into like equity kind of deals and stuff like that. So the stuff you were talking about just a second ago really kind of dovetails into like this kind of conversation. And I would like you to talk about the concerns of doing equity deals, right? Because you only get the equity on the far end of it, right? And you can get in there and there's lots of promise and goal lines move and stuff like that. So speak to that. How do you know when an equity play makes sense? When do you think it's not worth the risk and instead you just take your commission or your regular kind of like thing? Like, how do you vet that?
Okay, so and you're asking me, not Jake, right?
I'm asking you, yes, sir.
Okay, just make sure. Sorry, didn't want to cut you off, Jake. But I'll start with this. There's a play that's being made right now in our industry, which again I don't think it's being made on purpose, but it's definitely being made, right? Where business owners will take the most ambitious person on their team, right, and then start making promises of equity to them. Okay, as a result, what's actually happening is they're getting free labor from that person because they're never outlining the actual play. And myself or whatever, right? The ambitious salesperson is like, wow, you're going to give me equity? No one's ever talked to me about this before. Hell yeah, let's do it. Let's dive in, right? So about a year ago, I was talking to someone who worked in private equity in the medical space, right? And he was explaining to me the first step in any private equity deal. I hate to say this, right? But in any private equity deal, you outline how all parties will get paid, right? That's the first step, because if you don't highlight that step, then there are going to be hurt feelings. So the way you know whether an equity deal is going to be a good decision or a bad decision, if it sounds like I'm going to give you equity and you're going to make all this money, that is a bad idea. That's a very bad idea. Nothing is cement, right? There are no, like you mentioned, there's no goal line, there's no targets, there's no nothing. It's just, I'm promising you because you are ambitious that you will get equity in this position, right? The first thing that should be had if there's going to be some type of equity play is a conversation about who's going to get paid, how they're going to get paid, how they're paid in addition to their commission if they're still making commission, right? At what point they can sell their equity. It's called an operating agreement, right?
Yep.
If the relationship doesn't work out, what the exit strategy looks like for all parties on the operating agreement, right? You get an operating agreement in place. What I always tell salespeople is if it's a project that you're passionate about and then you can get an operating agreement in place, then it's worth pursuing.
Okay, man. I got to dig in here because I want some. I'm going to look for some actionable stuff in here, right? Because
please.
Everyone get it in writing, kind of thing, which is kind of thing you're talking about, right? So, and I love the thing that you're talking about, right? Because I talk about this with everybody. You need to talk about the elephant in the room, right? And you need to have some meaningful friction around this thing to really figure out where you are. And that's what you were talking about a second ago. Everyone else is trying to make sales and marketing so effortless, and there's no friction and stuff. And two, point you're talking about earlier, you don't know who you're dealing with if there's no friction points in the process. And then the first blow up, they're mad, we're mad, what is going on? Well, you don't know who this person is, right? In my opinion, right? So
you need that first road trip.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. You need the first fight. And so how long should a rep be hanging around when there's conversations about equity and not getting paperwork?
Oh, this is a really good question. I would say that it's going to from conversation to conversation. I would have to individual conversation to know how it's going, right? This is what I would say. If you are making your target income, your goal income from a commissionable side or from a commission and override side, if you're in that manager position, right? And you're happy with that and you've been doing it for a while and you're not facing volatility, then all good, right? But if you've experienced some volatility, which 99% of all sales reps have, right? Their income will go from 10 grand to 2 grand to 20 grand to 5 grand to zero, right? If you've experienced that volatility and the end goal is the equity side, right? And the equity has been presented to you, or there's been a conversation of, hey, I want to become a partner in this, then the sales rep has to structure the conversation from the equity side before the business owner. And the reason why is because the business owner is usually offering something that they want to give, which is why they've had that conversation. But they don't know what the next step of the conversation is, which is why they're not having that next step. Again, I don't think they're extracting free labor out of maliciousness.
Agreed.
Right?
They just don't know any better.
They don't know any better. They've always focused on growing this agency or this coaching business. They've never focused on the equity side, right?
Yeah.
So they're trying to entice someone to stay with them, but they don't know what the next step is. So if that's presented as what you want, as a salesperson, go and create a sales argument. I tell salespeople this all the time, right? That you're not just selling to prospects, you're now selling to the business owner, right? Create your sales argument about why it's important for the business owner to give you equity. Sit down with them on a one-on-one, and that's the only thing that you discuss. You don't discuss conversions. You don't discuss marketing. You discuss the equity and why it's important for them to give you equity, right? and then put clear guidelines on what's going to release that equity to you.
I love that. It's a brand new pitch. It's its own thing. You're there to run your process on a different target. I mean,
that's different target.
Yeah.
Yep.
When it's so funny when I talk to people and they're like, okay, well, how do I want to go try to work here as a salesperson. Okay, great. Well, how do I do that? Well, how do you get any meeting? You know, like the best roles never hit the job board. You know what I'm saying? And because in when you can sell yourself into things, right? It's the same thing. Like I love the thing that you said in there. They're talking about the thing that they want to give you. Okay. And there's a big thing in selling, and especially in qualifying. There's a big difference between when you show up and say, hey, okay, what would you like? Well, let me tell you. And it's a laundry list and everything. And then, okay, what are you willing to make do with? Oh, well, I'm willing to make do with this. Right. And handling that conversation on sales side is one thing, but having it on your comp side with, owners and founders and people that you're working with, it's the same. It's the same thing, but it's also not. Right. So I love that you're talking about that there.
Well, I think the big difference there too, though, is when you're talking about your own compensation, it can be really hard not to let emotion sneak in there.
Sure. Right? Really hard.
When you're doing a sales conversation for a product or service, if you've been doing it for a while, you've got some reps, you can largely remove that.
Well, if you're talking about money with your prospects, and most sales reps would just love to just skip right over the money conversation and just try to close, and then they're mad when they're like, I can't afford this.
If you can't have that conversation with customers, you will die crashing.
Not have it with a business owner.
Yeah,
man, that's a nugget right there, right?
Yeah. It's my favorite person to work with right now are salespeople who are trying to pursue this right on their own side, and they'll come to me and they'll ask for help on this, right? Mm-hmm. But what I always recommend to them is just like a sales conversation. You can't go in and ask for comp because it's what you need. Right. The first question that you should be figuring out is, what does the business owner need? Right. And then you structure the conversation around what the business owner needs and how what they're going to give to you will get them to their needs.
Yeah. And in the book Impact Players, I don't know if you guys have read that one.
I've read it.
It's a big piece of being an impact player is taking your own ideas and attaching them to the directive of the company. That's how they get done. Most of the time. Now, sure, you can come up with an idea that's different, but like if you're following whatever the path is that's going on now and go, hey, look how we could do this even better. And I would twist it this way a little bit. Boom.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yep. Same idea, right?
Yep.
Man, Moose, we might have to do a part 2, sir, because we are at the hour. Yeah.
I'm just getting to meet Jake.
So Jake and I. So catching up on the earlier part, Jake and I met at the bank that we worked at together, right? And we both had our licenses and stuff like that. Moose was a wholesaler for BlackRock, right? So the people who were coming into Chase and schmoozing, the financial advisors and everything, and we never got to like hang out with them. Like that's who Moose was.
That's what I was.
Right?
That's who I am.
And we would just get a little stuffed animal on their way out, and yeah.
That's right.
For sure.
Dude, I got you up in Maserati. Dude.
Yeah, exactly. At that time, you guys will think this is hilarious. At that time, I was driving a 2007 Pontiac Solstice GXP, and I was up in Princeton, New Jersey. So, guys, I was from Florida, so a 2007 Pontiac GXP does not handle very well in the snow.
No.
I didn't know. I had no idea.
All right, so we're going to wrap up here in just a few minutes. I want to see if there's any other Moose put out a call on Facebook that he was going to be on this show, and he asked, like, hey, what should we be talking about? And he got this just amazing thing of all this stuff. So, okay, one thing I want to talk about here, because this is really the thing that we're talking about. Jake and I are huge on story development, creating content and things like that, right? And stories are super important to the sales conversation, right? There are ways that we can educate and shift mindsets and build trust and everything else like that. And one of the people on here talked about, hey, like story development. Okay.
Yeah.
I would love to have just like a quick thing about story. How do you think about it? How do you teach it? How do you talk about it? What do you got?
So as far as storytelling, as the saying goes, storytelling is selling, right? The biggest question that I get from sales reps, and I think that this is hilarious, is I can't think of consistent content in order to sell, right? Or I can't think of consistent content to make every single day. It takes too much bandwidth. So what I always tell my sales reps, right, is that if you hear it once, then you should hear it multiple times, right? So creating a story really isn't as difficult. You don't have to come up with something on the fly. What you should be doing in your day-to-day practice is if you hear something on the phone to be like, that was interesting that they said that, right? And then you notate that down. And yeah, it might not resonate with your entire audience, but if you heard it once, you're going to hear it from multiple people in your audience, and those are your target members from that individual pitch.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that's why I can always keep something with me to write down moments like that, so I don't have to remember it. And I mean, like whiteboards beside John, I mean, he's taking that stuff down. I think it's a mindset. I think once you go from now on, I'm just going to listen for interesting things I hear repeated, and I'm going to make something of that. All of a sudden, content just starts appearing. All of a sudden, what?
Yes,
there's not enough content. No, you don't think about that. There's content all around you, and listen for it. That's the difference.
Yep.
So Jake and I were on a disc golf course with a guy that I was coaching for a while named Levi, right? And because we all here live locally, and so we're on this disc golf course, and I'm just like walking around. Levi Oliver.
Okay, different Levi.
Yeah. So we're playing disc golf, and Jake throws this disc. It gets caught in the tree, and he's like over there. He's like taking a picture of it, and Levi's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Dude, this is content." and then I'm walking around, and I kind of like look off, and I just have this moment to where like, oh, there's something here. There's an element that has overlap with the other stuff, right? And Levi is just so uncomfortable, right? He's a big I personality, right? And so like I'm just kind of thinking for a second. Jake is walking, and Levi is because he's just so uncomfortable. He goes, oh yeah, we can totally walk around in silence. Yeah, we're totally fine, because he was so uncomfortable about it. But like anything is content, right? And I was coaching someone yesterday, and I was like, he goes, another person on my team thinks it's crazy that we're going to go spend time talking to customers when we know what we do. And I'm like, that fine, but if you don't have people beating down your door for the thing that you do, you've not figured out the way to talk about it in that way. And so it can be as simple, like this is my example, because I was running around talking about sales process, and no one is like, say playbook. Everybody gets it. It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing, right? And so just by switching that one label, my conversations got a lot easier. But it starts with talking to people.
So I want part two partially to be about categories, Moose. I want to talk about categories because people put you in a category. John, you mentioned this from time to time. I think you even did yesterday. I'd love to hear your take on that. I've got 1,000 questions for you. So
sure.
I definitely want to hear your take on some of this stuff.
I'm down whenever you guys want. I appreciate you having me, John. And Jake.
Dude, man, thank you so much for coming in. We will definitely get a part two scheduled. Like this is just scratching the surface of like stuff that people have asked you to talk about and stuff that I know you should be talking about on here.
Sure.
So we're definitely gonna do a part two. Thank you so much for doing this. Next time Jake will be on time. Alarm issues, right? Abound. But thank you so much. Thanks to Gabe for coming and hanging out with us. I sent Gabe a book, and it was not my book, by the way. I'm not that person to where I'm just going to show the compliment. I sent him a book about the Maffetone method because he's training for marathons and stuff like that. It's just a great book. So thanks, Mike, hanging out. You should know Mike Tao, Moose, honestly. He's a super, super cool guy. I'll get you guys connected on Facebook. But yes, thanks everybody. Thanks to Moose, man. This was rad. Thank you, Dylan, for hanging out. Jake, thanks for coming to hang out, when you got here. It's all good. We're going to catch up on our bets and everything on Monday, guys. And so we'll talk about that then. Moose, dude, go sell something today.
Thanks a ton for having me. This was a blast. I appreciate the invite, and let's definitely connect again soon, whether it's live, whether it's whatever. Let's keep in contact. I appreciate you guys' friendship, and looking forward to growing something with you guys.
Absolutely. Cheers, everybody. Have a great day.
See you guys.
Bye, y'all.